Hello, hello. Welcome to the Town Meeting Talk Show, which, as we have said many times, we do on demand. Not all the time, not necessarily regularly, because people don't regularly, normally, all the time have anything to tell us. And that's all right. We just adapt. Did it every single day, no matter what, for like 20 years, and then decided this is kind of dumb. Let's just wait until somebody has something they need to say, and then we'll do one. And we are brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications, your local cellular and mobile data provider, providing your local talk show. They have a job opening, by the way, if you haven't heard the classifieds recently. So if you're a tech person who also likes doing customer service, you might want to check in with Cordova Wireless Communications. So today, we are going to speak with Nicole Baker of Net Your Problem, an appropriate play on words. And the subject is net recycling. We covered a lot in our phone chat the other day, which we're bringing to you now, on net recycling events coming up here over the summer, how to get net ready, what can be done with that net once it's recycled. And interestingly, too, something that the interns at the Cordova Watershed Project have been careful to make sure that I point out, the fact that recycling cans, aluminum cans, helps with the funding needed to recycle seine and gillnet. So we're going to cover all of that with Nicole Baker here on today's town meeting on KLAM. So, Nicole, welcome to the Town Meeting program. Nice to have you with us. And why don't we start out first by having you give an overview of what Net Your Problem LLC is? How did it come about, and what do you do?
Okay, I'd be happy to. Thanks for having me, JR. It is a business that I started in 2018. And basically the mission of it is to keep netting and line from the maritime industry out of the landfill. So we do recycling where it gets ground up into little plastic pellets, and then you can use those pellets to make new plastic products. And if something is not suitable for mechanical recycling, we find other non-landfill disposal options like burning it to generate electricity or turning it back into oil through pyrolysis or turning it into a concrete additive. So we try to keep all this kind of plastic material out of the landfill.
And how did it come about? Do you have a background in this chemistry or some kind of environmental engineering, or was it just a brainstorm you kind of ran with?
Well, I don't have either of those degrees, but I do have a degree with marine biology. And I used to work as a fisheries observer out of Dutch Harbor and Akutan and Kodiak on trawl vessels. And that was sort of my introduction to this idea of net waste to begin with. And those communities all have just piles of old nets lying around. And so I think it was about 2 years after I finished doing my observing job, I had seen on Twitter, actually, that there was a company in Denmark that was receiving nets for recycling from a fishing company in the Netherlands. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. I happen to know where there is a pile of old nets in Alaska, so maybe we could start sending those to Denmark as well. And so that's sort of how it all got started. We started recycling trawl gear out of Dutch Harbor, and now we do gill nets and seines and lines from different pot fisheries. And we do that in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, so the whole Pacific coast of the U.S., but then also on the East Coast as well. I have a representative in Maine and also in Massachusetts.
Wow. And so do you just recycle net, or is it other materials too?
Well, it's interesting that you ask that because it started out as net and line in the fishing industry. And then we sort of expanded to do net and line in the maritime space because we also had helped some aquaculture companies and some barge companies. And so it wasn't restricted just to fishing. But now we're sort of getting more into recycling in general. So we do cardboard recycling and plastic film recycling in Homer. And then we also do aluminum can recycling here in Cordova. And so the programs kind of all work really well together because they require the same basic components for recycling. So there's a baling machine here in Cordova. We can use that for nets as well as cans. And similarly in Homer, we have a baling machine that we purchased for nets, but then the staff at the store that it's at thought, oh, we could also be recycling cardboard. So we're getting a little bit more into other materials as well, and they help support the net recycling program.
Wow. And so now you've got something coming in Cordova here. Is it just you? Is it Net Your Problem working by itself, or do you have people you collaborate with, partners in Cordova? How does that fall together?
Yeah, so we have two primary partners in Cordova, the city of Cordova being one, and then the Copper River Watershed Project being the other. And don't personally live in Cordova, so we also have like a seasonal person that works for Net Your Problem that manages the drop-off events that we have. And so right now we have one scheduled for May 28th and 29th. So people can bring their clean gill nets or seine web to the baler from 10 to 3 on those dates. And then we will also be scheduling some for later in the summer and the fall. So we're going to do one in August and then also one at the end of September. So we're hoping that accommodates everybody's schedule, no matter, how long you decide to fish for.
Okay. And have you been the partner that the Watershed Project has worked with for a while, or are you a newcomer into what Cordova's doing as far as its recycling?
Well, the Copper River Watershed Project has been doing recycling in Cordova, I think, for more than 10 years.
Yeah, it feels like it.
I was not involved always in that. I came in a couple of years ago, and the reason for that was that China started saying, I forget what year this was, but maybe let's say 5 years ago, they started saying, hey, we're not taking everybody's garbage anymore. And so because of that, worldwide recycling markets got very disrupted. So the places where the Watershed Project had been sending their nets in the past were no longer valid, I guess. And so they sort of asked me if I would help them to start finding new markets for the material. And so I think the first time that we did that was in 2021. So I think I've been helping them now. This will be 21, 22, 23, 24. This will be the 5th year that I'm helping the Watershed Project to find a home for the materials once they've been collected.
Yeah. Well, I have to think it's been going pretty well because they've continued largely uninterrupted, at least in my memory, to offer these events. Now, usually when this comes up, the Watershed Project will usually send us an announcement so we can tell people that it's going on, but they're always careful to explain that there are certain parts of the net that have to be separated from other parts. And I'm not a fisherman, as everybody knows, so I'm not sure of the terminology. But how does this gear have to be prepped in order to be recycled properly?
Yeah, so you're very good to bring this up because recycling nets is just like recycling household waste. You have to put your glass separate from your cans, separate from your cardboard. And I know Cordova doesn't have as many recycling options as other communities do, but it really is about separating things by the kind of material they are. And so that's the rationale of why the nets need to be prepared in a certain way. And basically the main thing is if you're talking about a seine, we can recycle all of the components of a seine. So we can recycle the cork line, we can recycle the lead line, we can recycle the body web, which is most of what the net is made out of. But then there's this panel of chafing gear that's normally sewn in on the bottom. And so if you're just throwing out that web, you would leave those two components together. You would leave the chafe gear attached to the body web. But if you want to recycle it, those two things have to be separated because they're made out of different kinds of plastics. And similarly with gill nets, we can recycle the cork line and the lead line and the web. But some people use a weed line, which is made out of a different kind of plastic than the web. And the twine that is used to attach the cork line to the web also is made out of a different kind of plastic. So for your web and your gill net, we're asking people to try to keep as much twine out as possible. And then for the seines, what we're primarily asking people is to take the chafe gear off of the body web.
Okay, and if people have any questions about that, I mean, we a lot of times we'll finish up with contact information, but it might be worth doing a couple of times in this, since we're talking about these specifics of what need to be done. Who should they reach? Anybody that wants to recycle or just has questions in general, who should they reach out to?
Yep. So the local Cordova person is Aaron, and his phone number is 907-301-2855. And then people can also call me, Nicole, and my number is 907-359-3450. And you can also find us on your regularly scheduled social media things. We have a website, netyourproblem.com, and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn and all of those popular things, except for TikTok. I'm 38 years old, so I feel like I'm too old for TikTok.
I feel like I'm too old for anything but Facebook. So that's all. I don't twit. I don't do anything but that. So, okay. So you get all this stuff and then it's got to go somewhere. So what happens with it after you've accumulated all of it?
Yeah, so once the stuff gets dropped off at the baler, the first thing that's going to happen is it gets baled. So that's the most cost-effective and easiest way of transporting anything. So you put in this machine and it squishes it down and turns it into something that looks a lot like a hay bale. And then those bales get loaded up into shipping containers and it gets sent to Seattle, which is where we have kind of a clearinghouse receiving place. And then ultimately the nets that we collect get sent to a mechanical recycling company in Tennessee. And then they use that plastic in the manufacture of their own products. But there is plenty of examples of things that are more consumer related that are made out of old web. So if you see me walking around town, I've got on a pair of earrings that have been 3D printed from Gillnet web. I also have a knife where the handle has been injection molded out of old web. So there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen to the materials once they get recycled. And we hope that that encourages people to participate in the recycling programs, because I know there is a lot of maybe general mistrust of the recycling system in general, but we know where this stuff goes. We know where it gets sent and ultimately what it gets made into. So we can feel pretty confident that the extra amount of work that you're taking to prepare your nets for recycling is actually worth it.
Yeah. And did you say that your efforts in Cordova are limited just to web, or did I hear cans mentioned in there too?
Yeah, so cans is one of the other things that the Watershed Project recycles, and it helps support the net recycling efforts. Oh. So the cans are actually worth a lot more. You get paid a lot more for them by the recycling company. And so what we've been trying to encourage people to do is also recycle their aluminum cans, and we can use those funds to expand the net recycling effort. And you can recycle your cans by dropping them off either at the dumpster behind the AC that is nicely labeled, or take them straight to the baler facility. So those are the two places in town where you could help out the net recycling by recycling your aluminum cans. And
you have a dumpster out at the baler, if I remember right. It's not, you don't just put it in with other stuff, but there's an actual dumpster for it.
Separate area for it. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I thought so. Now, of course, Cordova's been, ever since I've been part of the community, has always been a very recycling conscious community, and our ability to recycle different things has kind of come and gone and grown and shrank. But if somebody, say somebody like, I don't hit fish, I drink a lot of beverages in cans, but if people don't do those two things that interact, just with you, are there other things that they can do to further recycling efforts or support them?
Yeah, so basically, if there is no demand for the products that are made out of the recycled plastic, then there is absolutely no reason for me to be collecting it, right? So the recycling supply chain is very similar to the fishing supply chain, right? You have somebody that harvests materials, you have somebody that processes it, and you have somebody that sells it. And if nobody can sell it, you shouldn't be harvesting it in the first place. And so you need that demand for the recycled products to drive the whole collection and processing system. And so what I normally say to people is how you can support recycling in general is to buy products that are made from recycled plastic materials. And so that's just being sort of a informed or a conscious consumer about the materials or the ingredients that are in the products that you buy. And if you care about recycling and you want to see it exist or continue, then that's how you can help as a individual citizen who maybe doesn't, fish or drink beverages in cans, for example, in Cordova.
Is there any kind of a resource, say, online or maybe through your website or something, where if people wanted to be able to get a broad, without having to look at the label on every single thing, but to be able to do some research in order to be a more conscious consumer, how can they easily get the details they need?
Well, I think, to be honest, you wouldn't have to look too hard on a label. A lot of companies that are making things with recycled plastic have it emblazoned on the front. So you'll see like soda bottles that say made with, recycled plastic on it. And they're advertising the fact that they're including that in their products. So you actually don't have to look too hard to see if that is part of it or not. They'll have the recycling logo or all these different things with the purpose of attracting your attention. So I think that really is the best way. Or if you're doing some online shopping, you can put that in the keywords of what you're searching for. If you're looking to buy a new pair of sunglasses because it's so sunny in Cordova today and you need a new one, you just put, recycled plastic sunglasses when you're searching for it online, and you'll see, some options that can come up.
Okay. Well, and two, I would imagine, a little Googling, or I'm actually a Perplexity user now. I love that thing. But, however you search up information could probably give you some overviews. Now, I'm always interested to hear the different answers. The answer to this question is pretty obvious. Basically, why should somebody care about recycling? What's the big deal? And many of us know answers to that. But I'm curious about the variety of answers. So from your perspective, being right in the thick of this effort, what would be your answer to that? Why should anybody just walking down the street care about this?
Well, I just say that we're not really sustainably using the planet's resources, and this stuff is going to run out. Like plastic comes from oil, and the metals in your smartphone come from a mine somewhere. And so it's not an unlimited resource. But in the case of cans, for example, like aluminum can be recycled indefinitely. So if you're recycling, you're not having to extract, new aluminum from the earth. And if you're recycling plastic, you don't have to extract more oil and all the environmental implications that come with that. And so I think, when we don't recycle, we're basically wasting natural resources. And for a lot of communities that are very dependent on natural resources, that's an abhorrent thought. So you wouldn't, waste fish or trees or anything. So if we're not recycling, that's essentially the same thing what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and that's always what's driven us to do it too, is when it really sinks in that if you throw that can away or that plastic bottle or that cardboard box or something, that anything that is recyclable in a person's community, that it's just gone. That's, it's no good anymore. No more good can come from that. It literally is waste. And, the fact that it's generally pretty easy to not create waste now, because organizations like yours and like the Watershed Project are focusing on this, and the Watershed Project interns, which is why I remembered that cans were involved in that, because they sent us this announcement a while back. That was really good.
Oh, wonderful.
The interns want you to. I mean, I saw it was like they were all in a bunch of Uncle Sam outfits. They weren't. That's just what happened in my brain. But they're doing a good job with that. Yeah, well, again, a lot of the answers are pretty obvious, but I like getting different people's perspectives.
Sure, yeah. What's your favorite answer, if I may ask?
My favorite what?
Your favorite other answer to that question that someone else has given about why people should care about recycling.
Oh, just kind of the one that I explained. The idea that something that is not recycled is basically destroyed. It's wasted. It's gone. It's never part of the flow anymore. That's the one that has always stuck with me the most. Is when it's gone, it's gone, and that just I can't. I have trouble being comfortable with that in our life.
Yeah.
I'm not as good as you are at maybe spreading the word around, and I'm not going to go around knocking other people on the head with a big hammer. But still promoting it from that perspective, because it's not that hard. It really isn't.
Right. Not that hard. And a lot of people will use the term like circular economy in different ways.
Oh.
But really, that's sort of the idea, right? That if you are recycling something that contributes to a circular economy, which is just keeping materials in the circle, in the flow, in circulation longer than just a one-time use.
Yeah.
So I think that's becoming kind of a popular way of thinking about material use. How can we keep this in circulation longer? And recycling really does help with that. I mean, the other thing that we can do at the Baylor, and if people want to reach out to Erin, if you're looking for materials, like if you want to build a subsistence net for yourself, we get cork lines and lead lines and commercial nets that are of no use anymore, but we can reuse those for other, not commercial purposes. So I think if you are interested in utilizing some of these materials for your garden or building a subsistence net, we can make them available to you, because reusing is always better than recycling. That would be the ultimate goal, if we could keep reusing things.
Yeah. Ask anybody that's ever worked at the Salvation Army.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I have to add a PS too to your question from before, which answer resonates with me. My answer is a little unfair because I also happen to be a pack rat when it comes to boxes, especially boxes and containers. One of the funniest jokes I saw recently on the internet is, one of the things you don't realize when you're young and of it growing toward being an adult. Something that adulthood will have in store for you is you're going to get something in a box, and you'll take the thing out, and then you'll look at the box and say, man, that's a really great box. I better hang on to that. Because it could be useful. It could be very useful for something. So, yeah. So, I mean, my office is full of boxes of components I've ordered and stuff because you never know. Our stations are here primarily to broadcast to Cordova. We've never made a priority, in part because we can't afford it, but also I've never been real big on reaching outside our market through streaming or any of that kind of thing. But we do put our talk shows on our YouTube page for people to listen on demand. And somebody in Cordova might pass that information on to somebody in one of the other communities that you serve. So if somebody doesn't live in Cordova, can they still recycle their nets with you in some form or another? Would a person that lives outside the community be able to connect with you for this?
Yeah, they can. It obviously depends where you live, but we have collection programs in a lot of places around Alaska. So we do Dutch Harbor, Kodiak, Dillingham, Haines, Naknek, and Homer. So if you're in one of those locations, netting in line can be dropped off. We've also had people send in material. So just this morning, I was communicating with a lady who works at a state park in Florida. And so they strip their cast nets that they have there, and they're sending them to my address. So depending on how, big of a material that you have, we can facilitate recycling from a lot of places. But those are the places where we have sort of in-person drop-offs in Alaska.
Good. Well, and again, if anybody wants, you've got a nice, simple email address, netyourproblem, or your web address, netyourproblem. It was .com, wasn't it?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah. So that's easy to find, obviously, if anybody wants to get in touch with you. So your first event, the one coming up in the near term, May 28th and 29th from 10 to 3 each of those days. I'm sure we're going to be hearing from the Watershed Project to make announcements about that, and they usually include that information about stripping things down first. Anything else about this topic relative to Cordova that we didn't cover? Sort of a catch-all here as we wind down.
Yeah, well, I think we do the net drop-off seasonally. The can thing is a year-round activity.
Right.
And then I noticed recently as I was walking around town putting up flyers that NVE is also having electronics recycling. So I just wanted to briefly mention that. I don't know too much more about it than what is listed on the flyer, but that is May 10th through 14th from 9 to 6. And that's just in the back of the NVE parking lot. So they have, flyers all around town, and you can call the office or email and get more information if you need it. But they have a more, restricted list of what can be dropped off. But I think it's sort of like stuff that has a plug count.
Yeah, but the way they put it is basically anything that you can plug in or that takes a battery, with the exception of big appliances. They don't want washers or dryers or refrigerators or that kind of thing. But it sounds like most of the rest of it is fair game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. So, I just love supporting and promoting recycling activities of all kinds because it all contributes to reducing the amount of natural resources that we need to extract from the environment.
Yeah, so, well, and not to mention that environment, electronics going into the landfill, you got all kinds of crap leaching out of that stuff. And that's another one where we always, we go through electronics in this operation. So we find somewhere to store it until NVE has their next item, their next thing. And then I've had a great appreciation for them doing that. So, I'm glad glad they're still on the case. Glad you brought it up, too.
Wonderful.
Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you, Nicole. I hope that, it won't be the last time. Maybe we can visit again as you said you've got, what, is August the latest round of this you're planning to do in 2025?
Well, there's one in August and then another one again at the end of September.
Oh, okay. So somewhere in there, we could catch up and talk about it again, or wait till next year, whatever. But I mean, it's a good topic and one that is very much worthy of covering. So
I appreciate taking the time, JR. Thanks for having me.
Hey, glad to do it. You take care, and we wish you all success. Nicole Baker of Net Your Problem, giving us all the deets on the recycling of net and the recycling of cans, which help with the recycling of net. She was kind enough to point out the recycling of electronics that NVE is doing. Very good stuff to not have go into the landfill. And again, anything that you can use again that can be turned into something else, net, aluminum, whatever substances are able to be recycled here. And obviously each community is different, but it really is such a shame to completely pitch something that can be used again, either to make more of the same thing or, in the case of net, to make something else without having to go scoop up all the raw materials to do it from scratch. So hope everybody will get on board. I know we like to, and like to see as many people do that as possible. And if you like having a local talk show, we'd like to see as many people as possible shake somebody's hand at Cordova Wireless Communications. They're the sponsors of this show, and along with Cordova Telecom Cooperative, bring millions of dollars in investment every year into Cordova. By the way, the CTC's Customer Appreciation Picnic is coming up this Friday from 11 to 1 at the CTC warehouse. So if you want some grilled burgers or dogs, tasty sides, exciting prizes, swag to take home, visit with the team, visit with fellow community members. That's all coming up this Friday, thanks to CTC. And, of course, their sister organization, Cordova Wireless Communications, bringing you this program on AM 1450. Remember, if you ever have an idea for a show, just let me know about it. You don't have to be the mayor or a councilor or, some kind of leader of vast legions of people. You can, just be a Cordovan with something to share, and we'll talk about it. As you saw here, pretty casual. That's how we like it. That's how we'll do it for you. Thanks again. All of your regular programming that's coming up typically in the 10 a.m. hour is on the way, so you don't miss any info, and we'll see you the next time that there's a time to do a town meeting talk show on KLAM.